Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. Today, we're discussing an extraordinarily significant watch in the annals of montre Journe. This is what's known as a pre-subscription chronomètre à résonance. Of course, to launch his Tourbillon Souverain in 1999, FP Journe issued 20 pieces to collectors who subscribed, that is, paid in advance, for the privilege of owning the individually numbered first 20 watches. Well, when he launched the chronomètre à résonance, the year later, in the year 2000, Journe once again sold 20 subscription pieces, but those were not the first chronomètre résonance made. These were the pre-subscription pieces, and they were made in about 24 examples prior to the 20 subscription watches. We're going to talk about what makes this watch so special. Let's talk about its fit and its size. So it's 38 millimeters in platinum, as the original Résonance was. It's relatively thin, as you can see when viewed from the side. 8.8 millimeters thick, 44.7 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, and it has a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. The watch is easy to wear, very compact. This was a late 90s aesthetic and ergonomic sensibility. The watch, though not small by traditional sizes, isn't large by modern standards. So this can really be worn on a small wrist as tiny as 13.5 centimeters circumference. My wrist at 16 centimeters wears it beautifully, and it slides easily underneath the cuff. The strap is a much later FP Journe double alligator leather strap. So reddish brown, large rectangular scale on the top. We have monotone stitch, folded edge, small round scale alligator on the bottom. This is how Journe straps are made today. The idea is gator on both sides, lasts longer. And it's more expensive, but the watch is worth it. You can see this is a brand new FP Journe factory strap. It features curved spring bars, so you can move this strap with no impediment against the case flank. That's the advantage of a curved spring bar. And you can see that the spring bars feature pull tabs, so you can quickly remove the strap from the case. The buckle in platinum matches the case. And you can see how these things were made back in the very early days. I'll show you the best advantage I can, but the hallmarks and maker's marks were on the inner face of the buckle back then. The watch is simple and enduring, as this is the very same case shape that Journe is still using today. You can see there's some marks. These aren't marks with any kind of a depth. They can easily be removed if you should so desire. We're leaving the watch entirely intact. And the case design has a lip to the bezel, a lip to the case back. That forms the boundary that defines the mid-case. Everything is of high polish. The bezel is domed. The lugs are integrated into the case band. They turn down sharply. We have a double dimple Journe style crown, and then we have another one, though this is not a crown, this is a trigger, and I'll show you why in a moment. The watch uses resonance, the resonance phenomenon, which at the time had been well established with metronomes and pendulum clocks, but it had not been achieved on a wristwatch with Swiss lever escapements and balance wheels. So FP Journe found a way to couple the two sides using resonance, with the result that eventually the two sides will coupled to each other, and because the balance is beat in opposition but by an equal amount, that is equal magnitude of amplitude but in opposite directions, when one slows down or speeds up due to position or shock on the wrist, the other will automatically correct it, and they will stay closely coupled with a variation of no more than 5 seconds per 24 hours. The problem is it takes 7 to 10 minutes for the two to begin to resonate with each other, which means the seconds hands might not be synchronized. So we have this flyback mechanism built in. It's a trigger that resets and resynchronizes the 2 seconds hands. The watch does include 2 mainsprings, 2 drivetrains, 2 escapements. They're wound with a single crown, and we have 1 power reserve to represent both of them. Power reserve is 40 hours plus or minus about 2 hours. We have 2 independently settable dials, so it is not a dual time, strictly speaking. It functions as one, and you can set these 2 dials separately. That's not the idea. That's not why a resonance chronometer was created, but it does function as a dual time. And The power reserve is a misunderstood thing. You can see as I wind it using that bullhead crown, it actually advances towards 0 because like a marine chronometer, it indicates 0 when fully wound, not when empty. Turning it all over, we have a brass movement that you expect. This is something you would find on just about any Journe built between 1999 and mid-2004. It's been revived on occasion, but for the most part, it represents production from 1999 to mid-2004. You can also see that this early version of caliber 1499 had a different barrel bridge. So later on, you would just see the barrel arbors. When it was a gold movement, you'd just see the barrel arbors. When it was a brass movement plated with rhodium, you actually get to see the clicks and the 2 ratchet wheels atop the barrels. So this is a different barrel bridge architecture entirely. It's not just that it is an earlier material, it's a different design. We have 2 barrels, 2 drivetrains, 2 escapements, 2 balances. Both of them beat away at 21,600 vibrations per hour, and they are coupled by resonance. They are adjusted in 6 positions. They are both free sprung to take and hold precise adjustment. Look carefully at center, and you can see that there's a rack and pinion system with a gold screw as the pinion, and then there's a black polished rack. You can minutely adjust the distance between the 2 balances. The clearance is almost 0 between them, getting them as close as possible without touching in order to couple them by resonance. It does require some fine tuning. It is not something that occurs automatic just by virtue of sharing a case. That's why there are some twin balance, twin escapement watches that share a case that are not resonance chronometers. And you can appreciate that the cock for the pinion and the cock for, or I should say more like the cover for the rack, are both black polished. There's a little securing screw that once you find the optimal distance between the balances, you can secure them in that position. We have Côte de Genève across the bridges. We have satination on the wheels. We have black polished screw heads and engine turning on the base plate. And while the anglage is very, very rough, as these early Journe pieces were visibly somewhat crude, almost like George Daniels' watches were in his time. The technical innovation is what you are paying for here. There are more beautifully finished watches in Mont Blanc's catalog. You don't buy a watch like this because it's the most beautifully finished watch. You buy it because it's a landmark by the most important independent watchmaker of our time. And you can see just how early it is with super shallow case back engraving. This was emblematic of only the very earliest tourbillon and resonance chronometers. You could see 00, that is a stamp by the case maker, Eleanor, representing the year the case was made. Not the year the watch was made, but the year the case was made. They're almost always the same or 1 year apart at most. But this stamping of the case back with the year of manufacture went away in 2005. So that's another charting the change type of thing. We also have the maker's mark of Eleanor, which you can see under my finger. It's that large diamond. And French hallmarks. Eleanor was a Paris metropolitan area case maker that from his pocket watch days to about mid-2008 made Journe's cases, which is why they always feature both French and Swiss hallmarks and this maker's mark that is not Journe. That went away in mid-2008. You can see the watch has at some point been back to Journe for service because it features the later Holt head screws. Those are those little tri-spoke screws. That is what they're called. They're called Holt head, and this watch originally would have featured more conventional screws. At some point, it went back for a service, and it received an upgrade to the current spec. But what you're really paying for here is the extreme rarity. Made before the subscription series, ultra early and representative of the very first resonance chronometer wristwatches ever made by anyone. This is an extraordinary opportunity. The watch we believe to be one of only about 24 ever manufactured. And if you do buy the watch and you see that the serial number is higher than 24, that is because the serial numbers of these early resonance watches were not necessarily sequential. So there's a little bit of confusion caused by that. We do believe that only about 24 were made. This is an extraordinarily rare and immensely influential watch. Reach out to Tim Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.